Welcome to New Life Live with Stephen Arterburn. For 35 years, New Life has been transforming lives one at a time thanks to the giving hearts of you, our listeners. Our goal is to provide you with wisdom from God's Word to give you hope and help in life's hardest places. If you have a question you'd like to ask today, our phone lines are open. Call 1-800-229-3000. That number again is 1-800-229-3000. Now here's today's host, Marc Cameron.
Hello and welcome to New Life Live. My name is Marc Cameron. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And you're listening to our show, our call-in show, where you can call in if you have a relationship problem or you're having a life challenge or you have any other question that you want to be answered by myself and my two co-hosts with me today. I have Dr. Jill Hubbard, who is an author, speaker, and licensed psychologist, and Dr. Alice Benton, who's also an author and a speaker and a licensed clinical psychologist.
It's a club.
But you also told me that your most important job is mom and experimenting on your kids, which I see because I follow you on Instagram and I see your really cool posts where you give this fantastic parenting advice, and not just talking about all the good things that you're doing, but you talk also about the challenges and things that you get wrong, which I love.
I think parenting works best when we are really open about all of our many shortcomings with our children. So there's a lot of topic for discussion there for me and my kids. I want to share an experiment that I did with my kids over the weekend. But it starts with a question. Do you remember how young you were when you were first allowed to leave home on your own?
I think I grew up in London, and I think you probably leave home earlier if you grew up in the city. I think because you have got to get yourself to school, public transportation. So I was about 9 at least when I could get to school by myself.
I've been trying to remember too, and I think that 9 was also around the age that I was allowed to leave home. I asked the question because Jonathan Haidt is an author. He's a social psychologist. He wrote The Anxious Generation, and he asks this question because he points out that we had a lot more freedom in the previous generations. We were allowed to leave home. We had more freedom, and we had more responsibility, and we didn't have internet access for most of us. And today it has flipped. Parents are much more anxious, and they keep a tighter rein on their children, at least physically. But on the internet, on screens, kids have a lot more freedom. And he believes that flip has actually caused our children to be more anxious. And we parents are more anxious. And I think we're anxious for good reason. We want our kids to be safe. And so we don't want them going off on their own and being kidnapped. But he also points out that crime has decreased pretty dramatically over the last 20 years or so.
Me.
It is. So I had to double check that. So I just checked to do a couple of sources. But apparently 1991 was one of the years for the worst general crime rates in the United States. And even crimes of kidnapping or abduction have been decreasing over the years. But we parents are more fearful that it will happen than our parents' generation was. Apparently, as families were larger 20-some years ago, those parents also didn't have enough time to helicopter all their kids. And so kids kind of needed to have more freedom. And we have smaller families today. But we are obsessed about our children's physical location, even watching them on Find My Friends and apps like that so that we know where they are at any moment. And yet, on their digital location, parents tend to be surprisingly hands-off. So that's where my experiment comes in. I don't let my kids go out on their own. My 11-year-old is able to, but my younger ones are not. So we had an experiment. We went to the grocery store, and I sent my 2 little kids, 9 and 6, off on their own to buy something and to do all the transaction by themselves. I was in the corner of the store. My husband asked me to stay in the store. He didn't want them to be totally alone. It was not easy. And yet the smile of triumph on their little faces when they came out successful. I don't see that smile when they come off screen, but I saw it with this experiment. What a challenge for us parents. Do we allow our children enough physical freedom, but do we allow them too much digital freedom?
What a cool experiment. And yeah, I would imagine kids would be more anxious because we learn social interactions best in person. So how can we learn to interact online if we don't learn in person? Fantastic advice, great story. And if you want to join us today on the show, myself, Dr. Alice Benton, Dr. Jill Hubbard, 1-800-229-3000. Give us a call. We will answer your question.
My husband was involved with pornography addiction.
He was unfaithful. He stepped out on the marriage and ended up having a child.
The Restore Intensive is designed for a woman dealing with a man's sexual addiction issues.
There were strip clubs.
My husband is a recovering sex addict.
If you've been affected by betrayal, an emotional or physical affair, or pornography, the Restore Intensive will equip you with support and tools to help you through.
Restore has empowered me and has given me the tools to work through my anger, work through my pain, work through my confusion, and help me realize that I am worthy.
Being here and being surrounded by people who get it has given me my power back.
The Restore Intensive is coming to Dallas, Texas, July 12th through the 14th. Register online at newlife.com or call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and use the discount code NLL to save $50.
Thank you, Restore. You have changed my life forever.
1-800-NEWLIFE and the discount code NLL. To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
I'm Steve Arterburn with a New Life Moment. Do you think life in America is out of control? Economists have repeatedly warned that Americans have become addicted to spending and crushed by debt trying to attain lifestyles beyond their means. Doctors and nutritionists speak regularly of the rising obesity rate and the danger it presents. Educators, pastors, and child professionals have long testified that generations of overindulged American kids are growing up seriously lacking self-discipline, direction, and conviction. The common denominator here is excess. It's become an American way of life, and to be brutally honest, it's destroying us. I don't think the question can any longer be, do we know? We must ask ourselves an even tougher question, do we care? Are you struggling with excess or trying to keep a loved one who is? You're certainly not alone. I care, and I'd like to help you. Please visit me, Steve Arterburn, at newlife.com. Thanks for listening to this New Life Moment.
I love hearing from Steve. It's amazing how much wisdom Steve has that we can keep rolling in these segments every single show here. Gio, we haven't heard your lovely voice today.
Yes,
how old
hello.
were you when you first were able to go out by yourself?
Well, it's hard for me to remember exactly what age, but I do remember that I still had to go to the beach with my mom in the 8th grade. And when you grow up in a beach town, that is just really not cool. So it's like, no, we're not sitting at the end of the beach, Mom, where all of my friends are. Come on, we're going to the other side.
There's a blogger who lives in New York, Lenore Skenazy is her name. And in 2008, she sent her 9-year-old son on the New York subway by himself. And there was an uproar against her, even concerns about child neglect and child endangerment that she did that. Now, we do hear some pretty disturbing stories about what can happen on the subway. But how interesting that our thoughts have changed so much over these past 20 years of what a child is allowed to do and when. Except for
I know, I was
Dr.
with
Jill's
family members that were talking about growing up in Texas, and they were like driving the tractors and stuff like at 8 years old, right, on the farm.
And I recently watched a Netflix documentary about Japan, and there's a passage that kids go to, and I think it's starting about the age of 3 years old, where they'll send a child outside to the store to buy something in return. I was flabbergasted at 3 years old.
Wow.
A child going
but I
out into
love
the
that,
city.
letting them do their own transactions, even if you're just waiting in the wings. I just think it just helps them develop so much self-confidence and able to speak to adults and look them in the eye. I did that a lot with my kids.
What did your kids say afterwards, Alice?
Well, they were very surprised first that I was going to do it with them. And I planned to sit out in the car, but my husband said, no, I want you to go in the store.
Yeah.
So they were up for it, a little scared, and they had a couple of logistical questions beforehand. And the first time we did it, they came over 4 or 5 times to ask me a question while I was in the store. But the second time, I said, we're going to pretend we don't know each other. I'm just going to stand over here. And my daughter was able to pull it off, but with some anxiety, she admitted.
But that's how we overcome anxiety, right? We have to actually have the physical life experience.
The exposure,
the
right?
exposure, right, to face it and overcome. So what a great experiment. Well, we're going to get to answering some questions here. And we also, so if you want to call, in. The number is 1-800-229-3000. We have some lines available if you want to get your question answered live by Dr. Alice and Dr. Jill and myself here. But we also have other ways that you can submit your questions, because we know not everybody can listen to the show live. And so we've created a way that you can get your question to us that we will answer on air, even if you cannot be available on air. So if you visit newlife.com/radio, that will show you the way to submit your question. I'm going to go to a question from Paula, who submitted her question that way. And her question is it wrong to leave my church to go to another one that is more comfortable? Here's the background. I've been going to church for a few years, and I'm not comfortable with the prosperity gospel anymore. I wasn't aware this was their belief, and I love the people. I went to another church, and it felt more comfortable to me. Less stage lights and loud band is what I seem to be missing. I'm wanting to go to this other church. Is it wrong to leave? What do you guys think about that?
That's an interesting question that she is even asking it, because nowadays so many people, well, maybe this is California, are so transient, they just church hop a lot, which is not the best. So I love her commitment to her church and to the people, and it sounds like she has some attachments there, and it is very hard to leave. But I think when you discover that you're at a place where you're not getting properly fed, that in order for you to grow spiritually, I think sometimes we do need to make a change, and it may be evidence of Paula's growth as a Christian and where she's at. And while new attachments are hard to make, sometimes there's a way to kind of have maybe our foot in both camps, not necessarily spiritually buying into something you don't agree with, but I see the community of God as bigger than just any one church building. Mm-hmm. And I know lots of people that make one church their home church, and then maybe they'll visit a Bible study or an event at another church. So I'm wondering if Paula could keep some of those connections, but just have them, maybe she meets them for coffee, right? The people that are important to her as she's transitioning and developing new community, the people who are really her friends, hopefully will stay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jill, and I'm tracking with you too, Paula, because my wife and I are in the same position. We went to church for the last 5 years because that's where our kids like to go. They enjoyed the youth group, but now they just graduated, and so they're out of the youth, and there's not really a big young adult crowd for them, and we've made some really good connections there at the church, but we are looking to be challenged a little bit more. And so we're looking for another church, but we're also challenged with leaving, the community that we built to go and build another community. But I think you're right. We don't have to lose those connections. And
I mean, it'll shift.
Yes.
It won't be exactly the same if you're not seeing them week after week. It takes a little more intentional effort.
But there's a lot of churches, at least in the area where we live here, right? So you can go to one church for main service, and you can find a group, a men's group or a life group at a different church. And then you can even check out churches by watching the sermons online. What do you think, Alice?
I think there's sometimes a denominational difference of tradition and expectation. Growing up in the Catholic Church, at least my view of it was you stayed at one church for generations. You were supposed to. That was a loyalty. But I see it differently now. And I think God calls us elsewhere because of his purposes, both what we have to give to a church community and what our whole family needs to receive at the time. And as you're all pointing out, that can change from one season to the next. My husband and I started looking for churches together early in our marriage. We were looking for small group life. And I hadn't grown up with churches that did that. So we tried out many different. And I thought we should go with my preference. I had grown up with structured faith, and my husband hadn't. So I thought he would just come right along with me. He had a really strong opinion, though. He wanted to kind of feel the spirit of a church, something I'm not really good at doing. I wanted traditional. He wanted to feel the spirit, and he does in part through music. And so we eventually compromised, finding a church that we both like together, which is particularly important for couples because we get a number of calls on New Life where there's discord between the couple about the church they go to, or even attending separate churches to get apart from each other and missing out on that relational connection of being at a church we can both agree on.
Well, and I think it's important to have the community, but to also, as you mentioned, Jill, be fed, to be able to be challenged, because that's how we grow, that's how we transform, with the renewing of our mind. And even in the early church here, you see examples of the church members being sent out to different cities, different places to encourage and to strengthen others.
Well, I think there are also seasons of life. You mentioned your kids.
Yes.
I also changed churches when my daughter entered into a youth group that was adjacent to her high school and that she could really be a part of. And so that was my purpose. I felt like it was more important for her to have those connections, and I could easily adjust. So there are things that take us, different reasons, and then those seasons pass. And so there's a time of reevaluating.
If our children are unhappy at a church, I think it's really important for us parents to be willing to experiment with something the kids are more interested in, because we want to try to keep faith and the practice of worship attractive to our children. So I encourage parents to hold to that pretty loosely and be open to what your kids have to say.
Unless they're not open to any church, but yes, one that is more attractive for them, where they can feel connected.
So, Paula, I hope that answered your question. I think we're in agreement here that it's okay to check out a new church, find something where you really fit in. We don't believe that you have to lose the connections of the community that you've built up, but find somewhere that you enjoy going to. And
realize there will be a transition time.
Yes,
the new church may feel comfortable in a lot of ways, but you're going to feel like a new person.
And there may be things that you miss from the other church, right? There's no perfect church out there, because there's no perfect people, as we know, but find a place that you can add value to. I think that's what we'd say to you here, Paula. So again, anybody who wants to join us today, the phone line is 1-800-229-3000. But we're going to go to another question submitted here online from Anna. Her question is, why did I marry two men who betrayed me, even though I loved them deeply and I thought each would be a loving companion? Anna goes on to say, I'd grown up with a significant amount of trauma, having been emotionally, physically, and verbally abused and neglected by my father since I was a very young age. Counselors say as a result, one is often drawn to men who discard or mistreat you. The toxic dynamic feels familiar, and one can mistake familiarity for safety and marry Mr. Wrong, as I did twice with two different men. But my two husbands were different in the dating stage. Both were kind, patient, and loving, treating me with respect, valued my opinions, laughed at my funny stories, and became calm. I became calm, settled with them. As we became an exclusive couple, it became clear that I loved them deeply and recognized that they were men who would be true, loving companions throughout all seasons of life, so I did marry them. But both mistreated me, lied, and sexually betrayed me with another woman. First marriage lasted 30 years, and our marriage was Christ-centered. Second marriage lasted 13, and he wasn't Christ-centered yet. But I remain closely connected to God. I'd like to understand the missing pieces to this puzzle. I called the show and attended Restore last year. Both provided a roadmap for my second marriage. Unfortunately, he wanted nothing to do with counseling or reading the book Worthy of Her Trust, and he gave me separation papers, and I moved out a month later and filed for divorce. Wow, Anna, what a hard experience you've had with two different men who you thought were loving and then turned out to betray you. Alice, what do you think?
Well, Anna, you sure have the understanding of how your history, how all of our histories affect what we're drawn to, and even it's a familiar pain that we're drawn to because at least we know it. But often it happens subconsciously, despite a cognitive awareness of it at times. But in our decision making, in our behaviors, even in our physical attraction, that chemical attraction, it can still be subconscious. So we hear you that they seem to be great guys, and they were acting like great guys in that first part of dating. And people can fake good for a shockingly long amount of time. So a rule of thumb, not perfect, but it helps, is to date a person through an entire year at least, through all the seasons of a year.
A year or even two.
And to do so with friends and family, getting to know the people that we're dating, asking for ongoing, honest, tough feedback from our group, from our community that we allow to know the people that we're dating. And just at least three things I suggest that we look for. One, we want to date people who know they're imperfect and are willing to talk about it from early on, which is pretty hard to find. A second is certainly looking for somebody of the same faith, but we've talked to so many people where they were faith in name and even in action, perhaps for that first year or two, but then not long-term in practice. And the third is willing to be in structured recovery, whether that's individual, whether that's group, a New Life Recovery Group, CR, because that means not only do they know they're imperfect, but they're actually working on becoming better people. It's a smaller pool if we're going to restrict it to that, but it helps increase the safety. Doesn't guarantee it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Jill, we're going to hear from you after the break here. We've got a break coming up, and if you want to join us on the show, it's 1-800-229-3000. Anna, in her question, mentioned Restore, which is a workshop intensive that we have, and our next Restore is coming up pretty soon here. It's July 12th to 14th in Dallas. It's for women who have been betrayed sexually, either by physical affair or by pornography. If you can give us a call here at 1-800-NEW-LIFE, we can give you some more information on that. We'll be right back after this break.
When you give to the New Life Scholarship Fund, you're giving someone hope for a brighter future.
I was kind of in the closet and hid with my struggle. Your donation really made the difference, especially in my situation, because I would up getting laid off from my job.
At the New Life Intensives, hurting people are able to begin a new path towards healing and freedom that has an effect on all of those around them.
I think the people who support New Life financially are people that I'll never know. You know, I'll never be able to thank them personally for the gift that they gave to us. Their giving saved me, my husband, and our family from being torn apart.
To help hurting people to connect to the help they need, make your gift to the Scholarship Fund at newlife.com or by calling 1-800-NEW-LIFE and specifying scholarships.
Someone called and sponsored me to come this weekend. Whoever that is, just know that you saved a life. Literally, you saved my life.
1-800-NEW-LIFE. Daniel Grossman on coaching.
Coaches are really focused on the future and helping people to develop those skills and those strategies to help them move forward in their life. A coach really partners with you to focus on things like personal growth or health goals, spiritual growth, helping you develop in your career or possibly strengthening your relationships or maybe even breaking free from a negative pattern.
If you need a coach for life, your career, relationships, your health and fitness, leadership, and more, call New Life today and ask about the New Life Coaching Network. Our coaches have been screened and certified with the same intensive process we use for our network counselors.
Coaches use different techniques. Some like to use strategic questions and accountability, ultimately empowering you to take those next steps toward your goals.
Take control of your life and take action to achieve your goals. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and talk to us about getting a New Life coach today.
I really believe that everyone can use a coach in their corner.
1-800-NEW-LIFE. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a comment, call toll-free 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live.
Well, welcome back to New Life Live. I'm Marc Cameron, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm here with Dr. Jill Hubbard and Dr. Alice Benton, both licensed psychologists. And if you we have many folks who support our work at New Life. We are a ministry, and your giving allows us to help struggling people get connection to hope and resources like the weekend intensive that I mentioned about Restore. We have a network of counselors, we have books, we have recovery groups, and we just have a whole lot more information. And so all of that is made possible by our faithful givers. We have a Club New Life that you can join, and we'll give you access to our video library and other resources monthly. And if you want to give to us, you can give at newlife.com, or you can call us here at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Right now, we're answering a question that was submitted online by Anna, who was asking about why she married two men who ended up betraying her. Dr. Alice just gave us some great insights here. Jill, what would you add?
Well, my heart goes out to Anna, and I wish this were the exception. It seems like this is such a common pattern. And Anna, you have the perfect setup in having the trauma that you experienced in childhood with your father. And so often when people have those deep father wounds, men like who you married see that, and they know how to come in and make you feel so special and so loved. And that's part of them reeling you in. And once they have you and you're married, then you see the other side more dramatically. I think we all see the other side of someone once we marry, but it's more dramatic in these situations. So Anna, I don't know how long you dated each of these men, how much time was in between, and how much work you did in between. But I think all of those things are very important. And one of the things, taken from Gestalt therapy, Gestalt therapy says we tend to fill in the gaps to create a whole picture. So like if you see a dotted line in a circle, you say that's a circle, right? So we do that when we see things, we go, oh, that's a good quality, that's a good quality. And then even what she's saying here, it's like, she saw them as true, loving companions that would be there through all the seasons of life. Well, you didn't know that, but your mind filled in those gaps because that was your longing and your hunger. And so in that, it kind of caused you to be a little more idealistic in how you looked at them and maybe to miss some things. And often we'll pick one person, we go, okay, that was the wrong person. So now I'm picking somebody that looks completely different, but it's just another variation in different clothing of the same dynamic. And like Alice, you said, there is no 100% guarantee. We can do all of the work and set it up in a way and people can still fail us. But is it worth it? Well, we have to decide that, don't we?
It saddens me how many people have told us after the wedding cake, they truly were a different person. Even on our honeymoon, they were different than the person I was dating a day ago. So it shocks us, but still do your work, put in the effort, especially getting those other voices in on your dating experience. So you're not looking at the person alone because we have too many blind spots.
That's such good wisdom from both of you. Jill, about filling in the gaps, that reminds me of a study done by Cambridge University several years ago where they showed that it doesn't matter what order the words in between are, as long as the beginning and the last letter are the same, your brain just reads the whole word as a whole. And oftentimes we can misread things, right? Because we have the beginning and we have the end, and we just make the middle up for what we think.
Isn't that crazy?
And what we want. Alice, your advice about dating for a year, so good. And I think that we need to go through challenges with our potential partners, or potential spouses, I should say, because usually at the beginning we are in an idealistic phase. We see that person, we see all the good, we are infatuated, but we need to go through the challenges of life. We need to see somebody under pressure to see how they perform. Years ago, I worked for a car dealership buying cars. And when we would suspect a car had an engine problem or a transmission problem, we would put that car under pressure. We'd put the pedal to the metal, so to say, right? Because when the car was under pressure, when the engine was under pressure, it was more pronounced, the problem. And so, Anna, I think that's really good advice from Alice here, is date for a whole year. Go through some challenges with the next people who you meet.
And do you know, though, that research also shows that getting engaged within a year and a half to 2.5 years is the optimal time for a relationship. So that's why I say a little longer than a year.
We also have 3 really good resources to help you in this. Is This the One? Our book, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. That one's by Henry Cloud. The first is by Steve Arterburn. And the third is we actually do set up groups for engaged couples in our Intimacy and Marriage Weekend to be able to get that intensive work done before marriage to help set the marriage up for success.
That's right. Great plug for Intimacy and Marriage, which we do have coming up here too in July. That is going to be July 26th in Washington, D.C. And it's not just for married folks, as you said here, Alice. We do have
I love that we started doing that. It's so great.
Yeah, exactly, because you want to prepare for the marriage. And so at Intimacy and Marriage, we are teaching people who have been married for years, and also people who are looking to get married, to show them how to examine their past, how their past can impact their present and create conflict patterns that we often assign to our spouse as being the cause of, but really they began long ago in our childhood. And so if that interests you, if you want to know more, check out our website, Intimacy and Marriage, July 26th in Washington, D.C. When we come back, we're going to hear from Reza, and you can join us too for the next 2 hours. We're taking calls 1-800-229-3000. We'll be right back.
For most of my life, I've been dealing with an opiate addiction.
Why is opioid addiction quickly becoming one of our nation's biggest killers? Maybe it's because it isn't only those who are addicted who are in denial.
We did what I see so many parents do, is it can't be an addiction. There's something medically wrong.
It's impossible to solve a problem when you don't know what you're up against, and families will try to find any explanation except the one that will put them on the right path.
Alcoholism and drug addiction is a family disease. It doesn't affect just the individual.
If someone you love is abusing painkillers, know what you're up against. It's time to admit it's addiction and seek treatment. Call us today at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. We have Christ-centered partner treatment centers around the country. Call 1-800-639-5433 or visit us online at newlife.com.
We just made a decision. We will do whatever it takes.
1-800-NEW-LIFE.
I was sort of vaguely familiar that the 12 steps had some origination in the Bible. I found Life Recovery, and one of the things I liked so much was that it had such a broad appeal. It wasn't limited to just alcohol or drugs, that it was addressing a wide range of problems.
At New Life, we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country. They take place online, in conference calls, and in person. And if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. We have startup materials, leaders' guides, CDs, Bibles, and more, all with discounts available for groups. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE and ask for Terry Ward. The 12 Steps have long been a great help to people in recovery because much of the 12 Steps' power comes from the fact that they capture principles clearly revealed in the Bible.
The 12 Steps is really a pattern for all of us as Christians.
Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433. We're glad you joined us for New Life Live. To be a part of the program, call 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live.
Welcome back to New Life Live. I'm Marc Cameron, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we have a new episode of Every Man's Battle podcast that was released today. These are weekly podcasts where J.J. West and Doug Barnes, both licensed marriage and family therapists, discuss topics about how to maintain your sexual integrity. So you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts, or you can connect to that at newlife.com. And you can spend the weekend with J.J. and Doug at the Every Man's Battle Intensive. The next one we have is right around the corner here. It's June 28th to the 30th, right here where we are in Orange County, California. And you can get the early bird rate through this Friday, June 14th. Right now, we're going to go to a call from Risa in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. She listens on WFIL. Risa, you're live on air with us. How can we help you today?
Hi, this is Lisa.
Oh, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, not Risa.
It's spelled with an R here, so my apologies. That makes a lot more sense.
That's okay. Hi. Well, I'm calling for a dear friend who just lost her son. All of a sudden got a bad blood cancer, and within a week he was gone. And he had so much going for him in college, and involved in so many things, and has two other kids in the family too. But yes, she's devastated. But ever since I've known her, incredibly controlling and codependent of her family. But they're grown now. And anyway, a week before the death, apparently the girlfriend broke up with him, but when she mentioned the girlfriend about 3 months ago, it was just horrible, unchristian-like words she was saying about her. And I guess she's never did anything wrong or dressed with a short skirt or anything. It wasn't a horrible dress, but to her it was a hussy, and she's horrible, and she's a hoe, and what's she doing at Christian college trying to steal my son? And then apparently she broke up with him the week before the funeral, and now she's blasting this girl all over Facebook and just horrible words, and it's her fault. She killed my son, and the girl did not murder him, and I just don't know if she's ever felt any pain. Like one time I mentioned a boy to her that may be interesting at the pool, and we talk, and he's in the military, but the guy never asked me out. So I mentioned somebody else. She's like, "You mean that one?" No. And she's like, "There's another?" Like I was some kind of whore or something. And she just, I don't understand the strictness that she goes by, but does she know how to love beyond her sense of what is right? And I want to say something loving, and how would Jesus treat people, his enemies, or don't let the devil in? But that she's calling this girl the devil, maybe she'll think I mean agreeing with her, but I don't want to crush her and not end our friendship. But I don't know if she's ever done any 12-step or counseling, because she knows everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Lisa, someone who is rigid and has these very strong opinions is someone who inside could be afraid. So they have to erect these really strong ideals to protect them. And so right now, finding something to be angry about might feel more empowering for her or better for her than actually the grief of losing her son. Because the truth is, it's no one's fault. You know that. And so
that could murder this girl. Maybe
I know. Well, yes, and hopefully the girl, hopefully the girl has other support around her. And her boyfriend was dying. That you can understand how that may have been too much for her to handle, and not knowing, how long it would linger. I'm sure she didn't think, he's dying in a week, so I'll break up with him. That would be highly insensitive. But your friend is just redirecting and deflecting her anger. Already she's controlling. And it's interesting that anyone who comes in to her children's lives, it sounds like she rejects. And she's even treating you as a friend that way. So once you're in her circle, like nobody else can come in. She's got to be kind of the center spoke. So you're right. There's a lot, Lisa, going on with your friend. But I think the number one issue right now in the present is her grief. And so instead of adding fuel to the fire or debating her on how she's treating this girl, tell me about how you're doing regarding your son and losing him. Are you allowing yourself to cry? Or how's the sadness going? And I'm just devastated with you. Can we just sit here in this?
Yeah.
She may not be able to.
And Lisa, if you can tolerate it, but check that first, you might invite... You want to talk about your anger, about your fear, because you got to be feeling so many different things with the way your son died, how quickly he died, and I know you're upset about what his girlfriend has done. I want to be a listener to you, but that may be more than you can hear, and it may go
she
too
may
long.
blast you.
So an alternative might be to say, I just want to gift you some therapy sessions so that you have a place to talk about what you have gone through. And we
only knew what I've done in my past, but thank God for the gracious mercy of my Savior, Jesus Christ, that I have been forgiven, and now I have a new life. But apparently she's never kissed anybody else in her entire life or looked at.
So it's hitting very personal for you, and that's you're feeling the need to protect this girlfriend.
A loving friend, because she's never let me in, really, even to go to a Christian concert or help her with summer school with the kids or anything. It's just us four no more. Now it's technically us four no more because the third child died. So nobody in except for this boyfriend or the girl. She'll go out of her way 20 miles to go pick up this adult kid, young man, 24 or 5 years old, to get him somewhere, even if the girl's not there.
And Lisa, as you point out, did you never piss anybody off in your life? I think that the opposite is probably true. That your friend is holding a lot of shame about her own unconfessed past, because we feel the freedom to be open, like you're saying, when we've received the mercy, because we've told somebody else about it and they loved us through it. So rather than her being perfect, I'm sure she's got a lot of skeletons that she has not known herself how to deal with. And that can generate a whole lot of control, because we're out of control on the inside, so we control other people. If you decide to point out what she's doing on Facebook to this girl, I'd have you consider wording it something like this. I really want to protect you from backlash. And when a negative cycle gets started on the internet, it can sure come back to bite you. I don't want that to happen to you. And I don't want you to regret later what's going on right now. Can I just lovingly, gently point out to you? I really hope that you'll quiet down on the internet, because this does not serve you. It doesn't serve anybody else. If you said something like that to your friend, how do you think she would respond?
I'm trying to jot this down. I really want to protect you from backlash on the internet or on social or whatever.
Well, you can listen to our show again too here, Lisa. It's recorded, so if you want to listen and slow it down and write it down, you can do that later.
Okay. Oh my gosh, she's got so much faith in her and knows the word, her angle of it. Oh, my God.
Well, be prepared, Lisa, that even what we're suggesting, it may not seem successful. It may not seem like it goes well. You really have to do what God is nudging you to, and you have to protect your own heart, because she's a tough friend to be around, while figuring out how generous can I be in listening and how truthful should I be in pointing out what's going wrong. But given that she's in grief, be understanding that it may not go well.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, and you're having a lot of feelings about her, but be careful of pointing out too much during this time. Acknowledge that this is a tough time, and maybe that's fueling all that she's feeling and lashing out.
We have a grief recovery workbook, Lisa, which I wonder if you would give it to your friend, because it would introduce her to all those healing principles that we know she needs. She doesn't realize it, but we know she does. And through the grief about her son, maybe that's an entry point. Thanks for being a good friend to her.
Yeah, even you reading that book might help you understand the different stages that she's going through. It sounds like she was somebody who's controlling and blaming before, but even in the anger phase, that exacerbates or can exacerbate those behaviors. You're a good friend, Lisa. You see your friend who's struggling, and you feel for people who she's hurting, and it sounds like she's hurt you before, but you're still wanting to call in and try and understand and see how you can approach her better, and we love that. So we are going to send you the Grief Recovery Workbook. And if you want to join us, we've got a couple of other people that we are going to try and get to here. But we also have another show after this that we are recording. So 1-800-229-3000 is the number if you want to join myself, Dr. Jill Hubbard, Dr. Alice Benton. If we can't get you onto this show, we're going to do our best to get you onto our next show here. And our Life Recovery Conference is coming up. That's going to be online October 5th. And we hope you can join us for that.
We all face days where life throws us a curveball and our routines or plans get disrupted. Things we wanted to do are forced to take a backseat to the unexpected demands of the day. If you normally listen to New Life Live on a radio station, well, you might not be able to that day. And on these hectic days when you're feeling stressed or frazzled, hearing the sound of counsel given on New Life Live is just what you need to navigate the unexpected things of life.
Every time I'm troubled or I have a problem, I'll cut on New Life, and there's always something that is said that is helpful to me.
By listening, I have learned more than I can ever express about how God wants me to live.
Download the New Life app for the easiest way to listen wherever you are and at a time that's convenient for you, or watch the show on our YouTube channel. You can even subscribe to our podcast from your favorite podcast provider. You never have to miss a day of New Life. Wherever you are, we are.
Hi, this is Steve Arterburn, and for over 34 years, New Life has been the most trusted name in Christian counseling.
Your ministry has saved my life.
If you struggle with emotional hurt, family, or marriage problems, the pit of depression, or the pain of addictions, we can help.
I'm down 100 pounds now from what I was.
Our treatment programs provide clinically appropriate solutions from licensed professionals, all in a biblical framework.
I have had problems with alcohol. I think God has ordained this place to be His.
You don't have to be a prisoner of your pain. Help is available at 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
She tells me that I'm a new man, and I feel like a new man.
It worked for me, and it can work for them too.
This time it is different.
If you're ready to take the first step towards genuine spiritual and emotional healing, call us today at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. God can open the door to a better tomorrow. Call 1-800-639-5433.
To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
Welcome back to New Life Live. We read a couple of questions on air that listeners had submitted. And if you want to submit your question, it's newlife.com/radio, and you will find out there how you can submit your question to us. Right now, we're going to go back to the phones. We're going to talk to Becky. She's calling us from Boston, Massachusetts. She listens on YouTube. Becky, you're live on air. How can we help you today?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm calling about the Gay Pride Month parades and events, and I wanted to ask you because it seems like they're gaining popularity, and I'm just wondering if you might think that it's like simply a reaction to society having restraints, towards any behavior, including homosexual expression. Like, are they just are they supporting people that are exercising their right to be rebellious? When there's, when a movement is not 100% accepted by everybody.
Yeah, it's a good question, Becky. How might this topic or this issue be impacting you?
Well, I live in a town where there is a growing interest in alternative lifestyle behavior and political activism. And I have friends that are in that lifestyle, good friends. And I just, it's hard for me to, reckon with the whole movement sometimes. I mean, I know, and I go to church, so I know the main message is to be loving towards each other and be kind and patient and all that good stuff. And I want to be. I just can't support some of the things that I see at the gay parades around the country.
And does that restriction on your part from being able to support it, does that negatively impact your friendships with folks that are in the lifestyle?
No, because I have like really strong boundaries about not talking about things that I'm not going to win a conversation with, or that make me feel extremely uncomfortable, or that might tempt me to say something in anger or whatever when I really don't want to offend. I really am not a arguer.
You're cautious with your words, very cautious. I do think you're right that we see culturally and through generations that rebellion does follow restriction. And so often it is kind of back and forth. We go to one extreme, we go back to the other extreme. There's a pendulum that swings back and forth. So I do think that's a part of it. I think that also the psychological understanding and the broad talk about mental health has opened up, in some good ways, a new level of discussion about what people have gone through, what their preferences, what their urges are. But unfortunately, we add to that such a high level of tolerance and acceptance are the way to love well. That's the path to healing. That's the path to help a person who is struggling. And I have a lot of disagreement with that. I think God's way is the best way to healing and to health. But I think in part because the tolerance message and acceptance and co-signing and agreeing with It does sound so loving. It seems like the right way to treat a person on the surface. But I think long term it does not help people for us to just co-sign on whatever a person wants to do. It sends people down the wrong path.
I think money plays a part also. It's very popular to court, the homosexual crowd because they'll buy more products from you if you do that.
I think there's also spiritual warfare that's almost always underpinning where society is going, because the enemy's always trying to find his next route to lead us away from God's way. And he's really good at finding very clever, very shrewd ways of making it sound good.
And isn't it interesting, a Pride month, and as I've said before, pride cometh before the fall, or God said, right? And so it's interesting to me that it's called that. And it's not a lifestyle that God condones. But he does say to love the people. And I think that there's been a lack of acceptance of this community. So given a month, they are kind of putting it out there in spades, right? It's like, okay, you don't accept us, so that's then some of the rebellion that comes in. But Becky, it would be interesting because I think one-on-one is where we do make changes and where we learn and where we love. With your friends that are gay, I appreciate you not wanting to maybe stir things up in a negative way, but I'm wondering if you could kind of dip your toe in the water in a positive way and just say, friend, I know I'm not gay, and so I don't have a full understanding of this. What do you think about all these parades and events? Because not all gay people are created equally, and some like them and some do not. And it would be interesting to maybe just have some dialogue that isn't meant to create conflict, but understanding. And can the understanding go both ways? Right? Oh, this is what you think. Okay, this is how I see it.
As I've tried to formulate, what does God say exactly about this, and how should we speak about this to other people while still loving? And I think it's very tricky to do. A pastor said God asks us not to sexualize any relationship outside of marriage. And that's a pretty simple way to put it. And it leaves us all restricted sexually outside of marriage. Now, I know not all agree with that, but that helps me succinctly understand that's what God says is going to be best for us.
Well, and sin is sin. There's no bigger sin than others. I mean, different sins have different consequences, but all sin keeps us from God. And true tolerance, I believe, is being able to respect everybody's inalienable rights. And an inalienable right is a right that cannot be taken away from you, but it's also a right that cannot be given away. So we cannot take away someone's right to form an opinion. And I can't give away my right to form an opinion. So true tolerance is really being able to respect that in someone else. And as you're saying, Jill, you're probably going to gain more traction on a one-on-one with somebody rather than
protesting the parade or something.
Yeah, I mean, we have a right to do that if we want to do that. We do. But if you're thinking about loving your neighbor, gaining ground in a relationship, it's doing what Jesus did with Zacchaeus, called him down from the tree and said, hey, I'm coming to your house for dinner, right? And inviting somebody over and building that relationship with them. And you can still disagree. Even to the end. But doing right, doing good, and being right are two different things, oftentimes.
Becky, would you ever consider nudging a little bit, opening up a tougher discussion with some of your friends, doing it in love?
I have about the an issue in another state that is going to force pre-K kids to fifth grade kids to read like revised sexual material about practicing homosexuality. And one of my friends said, oh, I don't think that'll never pass. That'll never happen. But it has happened. Yes. And so I know my friends pretty well, their history, their background, and things that they have in common. And y'all being, educated and experienced with people in psychology, you know that there's like a link with family dysfunction and homosexuality,
That's
right?
Becky, we're running out of time here. Thank you so much for your call today. We're going to send you Every Believer's Thought Life here by Stephen Arterburn. And if you want to join us on our next call, it's 1-800-229-3000. Thanks for joining us today, Jill, and
thanks for listening. We hope this program has helped you by giving you insights for handling the challenges you face in your life. We want you to know that we're here for you, but you also need to know that New Life Live is a listener-supported ministry. To make your donation or to get any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433, or write to us at New Life Ministries, P.O. Box 1029, Lake Forest, California, 92609. Please join us again tomorrow for New Life Live.
Thanks for watching today. We love helping people. I hope you sense that. And we know that there's always hope if you find the right resource. Now, if something we've said to somebody else applies to you, that's fantastic. That's what we're hoping for. But also, if you want to join us directly, you can call 1-800-229-3000 between 1 and 3 Eastern Time, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. Those are the best times to get through. And while you're here on YouTube, check out these other videos that we've done to help people see where they could grow or a different path to take. And if you do that, would you give us a thumbs up on the video, and please subscribe to this channel. There are many ways that we can help you outside of the radio program, and it's very hard for some to pick up a phone and dial 1-800-NEW-LIFE. But when you do, we put you in touch with somebody who cares about you, knows all the resources out there, and they're going to find the best for you. There is no reason to struggle alone. I hope to see you tomorrow. Hope you'll invite somebody else to come and join that maybe needs just a little bit of help along the way. I'll see you next time.